You have been doing everything right, and still nothing in your body changes. Every single morning you wake up determined, motivated, and ready to try again harder. You cut the carbs completely, tracked every calorie, and hit the gym without missing. You spent long, exhausting hours grinding away on that treadmill, session after painful session. The math seemed so simple and so logical. Calories in must always equal calories out. You were disciplined, you were consistent, and you followed every expert recommendation given loudly. And yet, that belly fat has not moved even a single stubborn inch for you. It sits there, soft, inflamed, immovable, and permanently mocking every sacrifice you have made. That deep frustration burning inside you right now is not weakness or lack of willpower. There is a very specific biological reason your belly fat absolutely refuses to leave you. It has nothing whatsoever to do with your character, your discipline, or your effort level. Something far more powerful than any diet plan is actively working against you right now. Your body has silently activated an ancient and deeply hidden survival mechanism inside itself. While you burn calories on the outside, your internal chemistry receives completely different instructions entirely. Those instructions are telling your body to hoard fat, protect it, and guard it fiercely. Your stored belly fat is being treated as your single most valuable biological resource right now. Understanding this at the deep cellular level will change absolutely everything you thought you knew. So let us go far beneath the surface into what is truly happening inside your body. Your visceral fat sits tightly wrapped around your internal organs deep inside your abdominal cavity. It is not the same type of fat found sitting on your arms or thighs. This deep abdominal fat is chemically unique and dangerously misunderstood by almost everyone alive today. It is densely packed with an extraordinarily high number of sensitive cortisol receptors inside it. Think of those receptors as ultra-sensitive biological antennas scanning constantly for the faintest stress signal. They're designed specifically and precisely to detect even the most minimal cortisol presence nearby. While other fat tissue ignores low-level cortisol completely, your visceral belly fat absolutely does not. It detects every single stress signal immediately, amplifies it powerfully, and responds without any delay. Every looming work deadline triggers your belly fat to answer that emergency call loudly. Every bad, fragmented night of poor sleep sends your belly fat into emergency storage mode. Every argument, every skipped meal, every moment of anxiety feeds that stubborn belly fat directly. Here is exactly where the story becomes truly alarming and deeply critical for you to understand. As visceral fat grows larger from cortisol exposure, it does not just sit there passively anymore. It begins functioning like an entirely independent organ operating with its own dangerous biological agenda. It releases powerful inflammatory chemical signals back into your entire body system continuously and relentlessly. Those signals loop directly back and trigger even more cortisol production deep inside your system. The fat tissue begins actively recruiting stress hormones specifically to ensure its own continued survival. It is no longer just passively responding to stress signals arriving from outside of itself. It is now manufacturing its own internal stress supply to actively protect itself from you. This is the devastating feedback loop that almost nobody in the fitness world ever discusses. More stress creates more visceral fat, growing silently larger with every single passing stressful day. More visceral fat creates more stress hormones pumping aggressively through your veins around the clock. The cycle becomes completely self-sustaining, endlessly relentless, and feeds directly on your daily modern life. This explains perfectly why some people eat very little and still carry significant belly fat. Their lifestyle appears disciplined and controlled from the outside, but their nervous system is in crisis. Their body has been trapped in emergency survival mode and has locked the fat vaults completely. Now, here is where most well-meaning people logically assume that cutting carbs will finally solve it. Drop carbs hard enough, insulin falls, and the body finally accesses its stored fat for fuel. In a perfect vacuum, without stress, that logic is completely sound and makes total sense. But cortisol does not care one bit about your carefully planned dietary choices or restrictions. When cortisol is chronically elevated, it walks directly into your liver and issues one clear command. That command is urgent, non-negotiable, and completely overrides every dietary strategy you have carefully built. Your liver immediately responds by manufacturing glucose from available raw materials through a powerful internal process. This internal process is called gluconeogenesis, the biological creation of blood sugar from absolutely nothing edible. Consider this extremely common scenario that millions of frustrated people experience every exhausting day. You wake up after only 5 fragmented hours of restless, shallow, completely non-restorative sleep. You haven't eaten since last evening, so you're already technically in a fasted state. You skip breakfast deliberately because intermittent fasting is your current, carefully chosen fat loss strategy. But your cortisol is already elevated from that poor night of sleep and accumulated chronic stress. Your liver immediately receives that elevated cortisol signal and begins dumping glucose into your bloodstream. Your pancreas then detects the rapidly rising blood sugar and releases insulin urgently to respond. You are now fully fasted, yet simultaneously carrying elevated cortisol and elevated insulin at once. Insulin is the single master switch in your body that shuts down all fat burning completely. Your fat stores become completely sealed, locked shut, and the biological key has entirely disappeared. You haven't consumed a single calorie this morning, and yet your body is already storing fat. This is the invisible metabolic trap currently swallowing millions of sincere and well-meaning people whole. There are 3 very specific lifestyle patterns driving this disaster inside your body daily. Each pattern sends your nervous system a devastating and unmistakable biological emergency signal without pause. The first trap is making long, moderate-intensity cardio the primary foundation of your fat loss plan. For decades, the fitness message has been delivered loudly, repeatedly, and with enormous cultural confidence everywhere. Move more, exercise longer, log your daily steps, spend an hour grinding hard on the treadmill. Millions of dedicated people followed this advice completely and received progressively worse results over time. Here is the brutal biological truth that your fitness magazine has never once told you honestly. Evolutionarily, your body has one very specific interpretation of sustained, moderate effort over long duration. It does not read that effort as a healthy and beneficial personal lifestyle improvement choice at all. It reads that sustained effort as a desperate survival march across dangerous, famine-stricken, and scarce terrain. Your ancient hardwired biology cannot distinguish between your gym treadmill and a starvation migration journey. In direct response to this perceived famine march, your body raises cortisol levels sharply and rapidly. Then it suppresses non-essential biological functions and begins breaking your valuable muscle tissue down immediately. That muscle tissue gets converted directly into glucose through the same gluconeogenesis process described earlier. Muscle is metabolically expensive tissue, and during a perceived famine, expensive tissue is sacrificed first. As you progressively lose muscle tissue, your resting metabolic rate drops significantly and measurably over time. You burn meaningfully fewer calories just existing, breathing, sleeping, and sitting every ordinary day. Meanwhile, elevated cortisol is actively directing every available bit of new fat storage to visceral regions.
You are literally dismantling your body's primary fat-burning engine with every single long cardio session completed. The scale may drift very slightly downward, but your overall body composition is actually worsening daily. You are trading irreplaceable lean muscle tissue for accumulated belly fat with every long session completed. The second trap is practicing fasting under completely the wrong biological and hormonal conditions entirely. Fasting is genuinely one of the most powerful and well-documented metabolic tools available to anyone. It triggers autophagy, cellular repair, insulin sensitivity restoration, and deep hormonal recalibration when done correctly. But the conditions surrounding your fast matter much more than most people ever understand or consider. If your accumulated stress load is already high and your sleep quality is already deeply compromised, listen carefully.
Adding aggressive fasting fasts on top of those conditions does not heroically reset your metabolism at all. It confirms your body's absolute worst biological fears about survival, scarcity, and incoming starvation immediately. When your body is under chronic siege and detects zero incoming nutrients arriving, it begins to panic. It interprets that specific combination as confirmed famine and activates every available biological protection mechanism instantly. Your thyroid begins downregulating desperately to conserve every last precious unit of available metabolic energy. Your extremities grow cold and sluggish, your mental clarity fades, and your energy crashes completely. Your visceral fat locks down with absolute biological determination, becoming more inaccessible with each passing hour. In a true biological famine scenario, your deep abdominal fat is the final emergency reserve. It is the survival generator that your hardwired ancient biology will protect at absolutely any cost. The intended goal of fasting is to lower insulin and unlock stored fat for burning. But when stress provokes cortisol to trigger a liver glucose dump instead, that goal is canceled. You are not actually fasting in any meaningful metabolic sense at that physiological moment at all. You are simultaneously starving and severely stressed, and your body knows precisely the critical biological difference. The third trap is the quietest, most invisible, and in many important ways the most destructive one. It happens while you are completely unconscious each night and genuinely believe you are safely recovering. You fall asleep from sheer exhaustion somewhere around 10 or 11 o'clock each night without fail. But then somewhere precisely between 2 and 3 in the morning, your eyes snap wide open. You are not groggy or confused. You are wired, fully alert, and immediately flooded with anxiety. Your mind begins racing through tomorrow's unfinished tasks and every unresolved worry without any mercy. You watch the ceiling for an hour before finally drifting back into shallow and restless sleep. This is not simply poor sleep quality or an inconvenient habit you have developed over time. This is a genuine, measurable, and deeply damaging metabolic emergency event occurring inside your biology nightly. As you sleep, your blood sugar naturally and gradually declines throughout the overnight fasting period. In a healthy and metabolically flexible body, this gentle decline is managed smoothly and quietly. But chronic stress depletes your liver's stored glycogen reserves and severely compromises your metabolic flexibility. That blood sugar drop therefore happens too fast, drops too far, and triggers your brain's alarm system. Your brain perceives that rapid drop as a genuine life-threatening emergency requiring an immediate and powerful response. It activates your adrenal glands, and a sharp shot of adrenaline fires directly into your bloodstream. Cortisol follows closely and immediately behind, both designed to flood your system with emergency glucose rapidly. That adrenaline surge is precisely what snaps your eyes wide open at exactly 3 in the morning.
You are experiencing a full-scale fight-or-flight activation in complete darkness and absolute silence, not from any external physical threat, but from your own metabolic system declaring internal biological war. The consequences of this midnight disruption compound relentlessly throughout every single remaining hour of that night. You miss the critical deep slow-wave delta phase where growth hormone is released most powerfully. Growth hormone is your body's single most powerful fat-burning, muscle-building, and anti-aging hormone available naturally. It is the direct biological counterweight to cortisol, and you are missing it entirely every night. Every fragmented, cortisol-soaked hour spent in broken sleep is one more hour spent in fat storage mode. You wake exhausted, chronically inflamed, and with your visceral fat receptors fully primed for maximum accumulation. So how do you finally and permanently break free from this relentless, self-reinforcing biological cycle inside you? How do you genuinely convince a body trapped in chronic emergency mode that the crisis is truly over? You must speak the precise and consistent language of safety directly to your nervous system every day. You must send clear biological safety signals with enough consistency that cortisol levels actually begin dropping. Your insulin normalizes, your visceral fat loses the hormonal fuel that has been feeding it and releases. The first intervention is deceptively simple in practice, but profoundly and measurably effective for every single person. You stop using movement as a form of biological punishment and start using it as a strategic tool. Specifically, you take a brisk, purposeful 10 to 15-minute walk directly after every single meal. Not a slow, casual stroll, but a deliberate and slightly elevated pace with real intention behind it. Here is exactly why this specific practice works so powerfully at the deep cellular level inside you. When you actively contract your skeletal muscles, something completely extraordinary happens in your bloodstream almost immediately. Those contracting muscles absorb glucose directly from your blood without requiring any insulin involvement whatsoever. Muscle contraction opens a powerful biological backdoor channel that completely bypasses the pancreas and its response. By walking immediately after eating, when blood glucose is at its natural post-meal peak, you win. You use your muscles as a direct glucose sink before insulin even needs to enter the conversation. Less insulin secreted means dramatically less fat storage signal being broadcast throughout your entire body system. Less post-meal stress, significantly improved digestion, and dramatically steadier, sustainable energy throughout the afternoon. 3 15-minute walks after meals equals 45 total minutes of pure, targeted metabolic impact every single day. 0 cortisol cost, 0 famine signal triggered, 0 muscle tissue breakdown, only a clean fat-burning signal sent. Compare that metabolic reality against 45 minutes of treadmill cardio, which spikes cortisol and signals active famine. The absolute strategic superiority of a short walk over long cardio becomes completely and utterly undeniable immediately. The third intervention targets that devastating 3 in the morning metabolic crisis event directly and permanently for you. If your eyes are snapping open in the middle of the night, wired and anxious, listen carefully. The precise solution is to prevent that dangerous blood sugar crash before it ever begins occurring at all. The specific protocol is 1 teaspoon of raw honey paired carefully with a small pinch of sea salt. You take it consistently right before going to sleep every night without exception or compromise. Before dismissing this as counterintuitive or strange, please fully understand the precise biological mechanism behind it. Raw honey provides a very specific type of slow-releasing fructose that your liver converts directly into glycogen. It effectively tops off your liver's critical fuel reserves immediately before the long overnight fasting period. With those glycogen reserves adequately filled, your brain detects absolutely no fuel emergency at 2 in the morning. The biological panic button never gets pressed, the adrenaline never fires, and the cortisol never surges overnight. The fat vaults never get locked shut during the night because no emergency signal ever gets triggered. The pinch of sea salt supports healthy adrenal function and helps regulate your fluid balance overnight effectively. Both elements work together directly to prevent that devastating nocturnal cortisol spike from occurring inside you. What you receive in return is uninterrupted, deeply restorative, and growth hormone-rich sleep every single night. You remain in slow-wave sleep long enough for growth hormone to complete its full, powerful overnight work. You wake having spent 8 genuine hours in a true hormonal fat-burning environment, rather than storage mode. The caloric cost of 1 small teaspoon of honey is completely trivial and metabolically inconsequential for you. The hormonal return on that single small investment before sleep is absolutely and measurably enormous for you. The third intervention addresses exercise intensity permanently without ever returning to chronic long cardio sessions again. You want to powerfully signal your muscles to grow and your growth hormone to spike dramatically upward. You want to achieve this completely without adding further burden to your already overloaded cortisol stress system. The precise answer is brief, infrequent, maximum effort movement, the focused and strategic sprint protocol practiced correctly. Once or twice a week, you find a hill, a stationary bike, or open flat ground nearby. You sprint with every single ounce of raw physical effort your body can possibly generate in that moment. Not a jog, not a moderate run, but an absolute all-out maximum intensity sprint for 15 seconds. Then you stop completely, rest fully, and let your heart rate recover entirely before considering another effort. This pattern is biologically the closest thing to what your body was genuinely designed and built for. The ancestral hunt was never a sustained marathon of moderate effort dragged across endless open terrain.
It was a short, explosive, high-stakes, maximum-effort burst followed by genuine and extended recovery time afterward. That precise effort pattern triggers a massive, well-documented and immediate release of human growth hormone inside you. Documented research shows growth hormone increases of 400% or more following this specific training type. Growth hormone is the direct and powerful biological antagonist to cortisol. They cannot coexist at equal levels. It actively builds and preserves lean muscle tissue and specifically targets visceral fat for mobilization and burning. By doing dramatically less total volume at dramatically greater intensity, you generate exactly the hormonal signal needed. You build the metabolic engine instead of slowly and painfully dismantling it session by punishing session. Your nutritional approach matters just as profoundly as your entire movement strategy does in this process. The governing key principle is making your eating window consistently signal abundance and safety rather than scarcity. When you finally eat, protein must become the absolute non-negotiable foundation of every single meal you consume. Not a minor afterthought, not an optional side item, the very first and most important priority always. Protein powerfully triggers the release of glucagon, a hormone that directly opposes insulin's aggressive fat-storing effects. It is the most deeply satiating macronutrient available, turning off hunger signals efficiently and powerfully every time. It also provides the essential amino acid building blocks your body requires to maintain and build muscle. A practical and proven daily target is 1 gram of quality protein per pound of your goal weight. If your target weight is 150 pounds, aim consistently for 150 daily grams. If your fasting window is so extended that reaching this protein target becomes impossible, shorten the window immediately. Widen your eating window enough and prioritize hitting your protein target without any compromise or negotiation ever. A body that is adequately and consistently fed with protein reads its entire environment as safe and abundant. And a body that genuinely and deeply feels safe and abundantly nourished will finally begin releasing its fat. There is one final powerful tool that costs absolutely nothing and requires only 60 seconds of your time. Before any meal, before sleep, or during any transition moment in your day, pause with intention, deliberately. Take 60 focused seconds and generate a genuine, deeply felt feeling of authentic appreciation for something real. Not just a passing intellectual thought about gratitude, but an actual warmth physically felt deep in your chest. That internal shift is measurable and repeatedly documented by rigorous autonomic nervous system research conducted worldwide. Your nervous system transitions immediately from sympathetic fight or flight dominance toward parasympathetic rest and digest mode. Cortisol is chemically and measurably suppressed within just minutes of that genuine parasympathetic state being activated. Done consistently before eating, this practice improves your digestive enzyme output and dramatically lowers your insulin response. Done before sleep, it measurably shortens the time needed to fall into deep and genuinely restorative rest. Done every single day with consistency, it steadily chips away at the chronic cortisol baseline, feeding your belly fat. It costs you nothing, it requires only 60 seconds, and it works directly on the root hormonal mechanism. Now pull every single piece of this together and see the complete and liberating picture with absolute clarity. Your belly fat was never once a calorie problem at any point throughout your entire frustrating journey. It was never a discipline problem, a willpower problem, or a character flaw of any kind, ever. It was always and only a chronic hormonal signal problem happening silently and deeply inside your biology. Your body was receiving relentless messages of threat, scarcity, and biological emergency and responding with perfect logic. It held on to its most strategically valuable energy reserve because every single incoming signal told it to. The real solution is not to punish your body even harder with more cardio and deeper restriction. The real and permanent solution is to fundamentally and completely change the biological signal you are sending it. You walk deliberately after every meal instead of grinding another punishing hour on the treadmill as before. You sprint briefly with full intensity and rest completely instead of jogging endlessly on that unforgiving machine. You protect your liver glycogen reserves every night instead of triggering a devastating midnight metabolic emergency event. You eat enough quality protein consistently to signal safety, abundance, and security during every single eating window. You use genuine gratitude deliberately and consistently to suppress cortisol and activate your parasympathetic recovery system daily. When you do all these things consistently, something truly profound and irreversible begins shifting deep inside your biology. The chronic threat signal that has been broadcasting loudly for months or even years begins to fade steadily. The sensitive antennas packed inside your visceral fat stop receiving that constant emergency broadcast every single moment. The self-sustaining feedback loop that was manufacturing its own stress hormones begins winding down steadily and measurably. The fat, having no more cortisol to feed on, finally begins to mobilize, release, and burn away. The biological locks come completely off the fat vaults that had been sealed tightly for so long. Your energy returns with a clarity and quiet steadiness you may not have genuinely felt in years. The brain fog that has clouded your thinking and motivation for so long begins lifting noticeably each morning. Your systemic inflammation drops, your sleep deepens, and your mornings begin feeling distinctly lighter and more hopeful. And that stubborn, immovable, deeply frustrating layer of fat around your midsection that survived every single diet begins responding. Not because you finally punished it hard enough into reluctant submission after years of brutal effort,
but because you finally stopped speaking the language of biological threat and started speaking the language of safety. This was never about doing more, pushing harder, or suffering through another punishing round of restriction and cardio. This was always about doing the precise right things in the right biological sequence with hormonal intelligence. Always speaking directly and consistently to a frightened and exhausted metabolism and telling it clearly every day. The war inside your body is finally, completely, and permanently over.